Well, welcome to Coaches and Cafe, having coffee, at least me. And I'm Krister Svensson. This is Malcolm Larri.
Hello.
Hello to you, sir. And we're here at this wonderful building here in Old Town in Stockholm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chimney Cafe. Beautiful, amazing ceilings, like an old church. I think it must have been an old church back in the day. It's a wonderful thing about Stockholm is so many old buildings. Amazing history.
Absolutely. And this episode will be about codependency and co-addiction.
Yeah.
And funny enough, in the last episode we were talking about families.
Yeah.
Yeah, and having peace with our family.
Yeah. Being at peace with your family.
Being at peace with the family. And so, of course, it makes you think about addiction, co-dependency, because, you know, it's very connected to that.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm a coach, not a therapist, but you're also a coach and a therapist.
Yes.
And in your practice, you're dealing with a lot of people who are in codependent relationships.
Yes.
And the reason I asked you if we could talk about this is because I would like to learn more about it myself, but also I think it's another framework for people to have some perspective on their relationships.
Yes.
And as we're going to discuss, we're going to focus mostly on romantic relationships in this talk, just as a starting point. But certainly these, codependent relationships spread out to basically any of the kind of human interactions that we have.
True. Yeah.
So can we just start with the basics? What is a codependent relationship?
Well, at first we have to say that in the English language, right, they separate, like if you're co-addict, it's like we often think if you are having a relationship, for instance, with an alcoholic or a drug addiction person, right? But the codependency is the behavior that you have that makes you go into the relationship and be a co-addict, right? So, and basically is that what you do is, if you are a co-addict, that is that one person drinks, for example, and the other person sort of establish everything around that. For example, it could be like calling sick or whatever, right? Everything in the co-addict's world focus on the addiction. Yeah. And usually it's to get away, to get the habit or the addiction away. But the funny thing is that if you, for instance, are an alcoholic, it's a fact that if you're an alcoholic and you drink very hard and you come home and say, I quit, after a while the co-addict partner will, basically, this is what I heard for a fact, that it happens that they say that please start drinking again,
Because they're basically in a relationship with an addict, so they want they're not used to being in a relationship with someone who's not an addict.
No.
So when that person stops drinking, it creates a sort of crisis for them.
Yes. Because,
so then they support behaviours that help the addict go back to drinking or taking drugs.
You see that if you are co-addicted and in a relationship, if I'm not co-addict with my codependency, I'm nothing. This is what I am.
So is it a bit like a rescuing role that the person is in?
Yeah, you could say that. I mean, often it is like this. If you're an addict, you have in an average between 6 and 10 persons that are close in your addiction, right? And the only purpose they have in your life is to remain your addiction, to support your addiction. And if you don't support my addiction, you wouldn't be around me. Right. That's a purpose, right? Yeah. So what you do if you are living with if you are a codependent, is that you always support the addiction because that's your role.
Okay. So with codependent relationships, though, do they always have to be with someone who's does have some kind of addiction, or can codependent relationships also just be being in a relationship with someone who's emotionally abusive?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because this thing with, for first thing, the two things about this, I would say that one thing is that addiction can be so many things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So some people are addicts,
Yeah.
but they have what we can see from the outside as like a positive behavior. It could be like they doing a lot of sports or doing things that usually are like that is good, right? But they do it so much that they sort of control their whole life.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And if it's on a negative way and they can't have a normal life, they're addicts, right? But then, on the other hand, codependency is a problem because you sort of, in every relationship you have, try to find a way to control the other person. Because that is your role. This is what you do.
Right.
So
in these relationships, it seems like there's basically almost three people. There's the person A. Let's say man. Let's keep this to man-woman relationship. Okay, just for simple explanation. There's a man, there's a woman, and the third part is some kind of toxic behaviour or controlling behaviour in the relationship that's creating some kind of connection or balance. Am I right?
Yeah, you are right.
Okay.
But usually when I describe this, I try to talk about it as a magnet. A magnet in the field of communication.
Yeah.
Right? It's a magnet.
Okay.
It could be a toxic, like you said, but it can also be a behavior that is so strong that it sucks and drags in people into it, right? You can see it like a solar system.
Yeah, like a black hole.
Yeah, like a black hole.
Just sucks everything
into it.
into
Will
it.
drag you in.
Yeah.
And if you codependent, you search for the black holes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
so tell me, if for the people that are watching this and they might be thinking that they're in a codependent relationship, what are some signals that you're in a codependent relationship? What are some of the symptoms of a codependent relationship that you would say are things that people could look for?
Actually, I thought about that before this
Good.
meeting. Yeah. If you are very self-sacrificing, if you are having external focus all the time, right? If you also feel that you have low self-worth, right? And focus on other people all the time.
Right.
So much that everything that you really think is important disappears. So that you always sacrifice. You are self-sacrificing all the time, right?
Yeah.
So I want to do that, but I have to do this because my husband want to do that.
Yep.
All the time. So there are some signals, and if you are in that position, you will know that now when I talk about self-sacrificing. And the problem is that it really gets you very stressed. That's one thing, you will never be able to live the life that you really want. It's impossible. And the other bad thing, of course, is that if you get kids, you will not be able to connect with them because you can't connect with them because you're somewhere else. It's impossible for you to be here because you're always somewhere else. That will also make you feel anxiety, and it's not good.
You're right. And then if we go down this list again, so give me the first one again, and we're just going to discuss that. So the first symptom was self-sacrifice.
Yeah, that's a very clear.
So when someone goes into that behaviour, and all of us have been in that position of sometimes like putting ourselves out there too much. But when does it become a tipping point into a destructive behaviour? Because I mean, sometimes in our lives we actually have to do that. Like maybe we're looking after a sick parent, or we're helping someone through. So we all go through periods where we put other people first, like for a short amount of time, but they get priority, and that's okay. That's healthy. It's just sort of like managing a circumstance, but then you come back to center. But when somebody is doing that to the point where it's becoming destructive, how do they navigate their way back? How can they come back from that?
Yeah, I think you have to ask yourself, for instance, you said that you're helping, always ask yourself, who am I helping? Why am I helping? You know, and also you have to think, I think that you have to, for instance, if you have a relationship, you have to ask yourself, what price are you willing to pay?
Yeah.
You know, when do you set the borders? I mean, if your relationship and the person gets sick, right? Of course, we have a natural feeling that you help this person,
loyalty,
you know, loyalty, and stuff like that. But it will come to a point where your life disappears, and you will determine yourself.
Yep.
And you have to ask yourself, when is that point? And what am I going to do then? You know. But of course, when it comes to things like sickness and stuff like that, it's other problems. But when it's addiction, it's very obvious that, you know, you have to be very clear with what you want.
Right.
And also understand one thing: if it's 99% of the relationship is good, but 1% is bad, it's only when it drinks. And I mean, it was like 2 years ago. But the problem is, I'm still waiting for it to happen. You know. So, but the relationship otherwise is great. And I'm sorry, you know, 99% can't be good and 1 bad. It's bad. You know.
If it's a constant mental discussion you're having about it and an anxiety, then it's not 1%.
No, and that's often how it is, right? Because if something happened that goes very much out of terms, I mean, if your relationship and that person in a period of time drinks so much that something happens, you will get a feeling that this could happen again. And you will start to control everything around it. And when we go to party, I will check, oh, don't have that glass of wine, don't do that.
Or even you might avoid going to parties.
Yes, of course.
And seeing other people and doing basic social things.
Of course.
So even though the addiction could be very much under control, the fear of the addiction becomes the problem in the relationship.
Yes, of course.
The fear of it coming back.
Because when you are together with an addict, you are together with the addiction, and you will never get rid of it. You know, you have to find a way to work with that. You know, and it is a cost, I can tell you.
And what was the second item on your list of symptoms?
The second, I said self-sacrificing, external focus.
External focus. Okay. So if we take that, I mean, self-sacrifice and external focus are very much connected.
Yeah, they are actually.
It's like you know, another way of describing that.
Absolutely.
But there is a key point there, which is that if you're constantly externally focused, you're not monitoring your own behaviour.
No.
You're not looking at, you know, have I moved away from my own principles and values just to be in this relationship? And that external focus must have a huge price in that regard over a long period of time as well. Because you're no longer self-assessing.
No.
You're constantly you're obsessed with the other person.
Yes. And what will happen is that you lose yourself, you know. And of course that can, you know, you can go into depression and everything like that. But it's a destructive way of living, you know. And, you know.
So, I mean, people find themselves in these situations. Some people find themselves in these situations. And at some point they might become aware that they're in a codependent relationship. What is the course of action and steps they need to take to make a change? Can they do it themselves?
Yes, they can, but I think it's very good to go to talk with someone, right? And there are also like Al-Anon and stuff like that, which is like the same as anonymous alcoholics, but you know.
But for their partners and family.
Yes. So, but what you have to do is, like I said before, you know, what kind of life do I want to live? And what price am I willing to pay? You know, and that's the first thing, you know.
One of the things that I've seen with friends of mine that have struggled with addiction and then looking at their relationships is that and I'm not an expert in this area at all, so I put that out there straight away. I'm not an expert, but I'm just talking about my personal experience of observing my friends, is that if I have a friend who's an alcoholic, what I notice is that his wife is constantly trying to separate his drinking and him from being the same person. He's wonderful, but he drinks. It's like they have this person that they're holding. It's like they're holding the person and their addiction separate, so that they can still stay in love with the person. And is that a healthy way to look at it, or an unhealthy way to look at it, do you think?
No, it's an unhealthy way to look at it. I mean, you can't separate the addiction from the person, right? If you are living with an addict, you're living with an addict, right? You're
living with the addiction.
So that's how it is. You can't separate it, and it's impossible to do it, you know.
But I have seen people doing it, so it is obviously some kind of survival mechanism that people use, and it's some kind of coping mechanism, maybe is a better word, that they use to hang on to the relationship, and maybe hang on to, because you know the thing is that you and I both know when people make choices in their life, they don't want to think that they made the wrong choice. So people will often stay in a bad choice for a long period of time because they don't want to admit to themselves they might have chosen wrong, or I mean even choosing is not even necessarily the right word, but that they've got themselves into a bad situation. So
first thing that I have to say as well is that if addiction is in a relationship, you will always be second. You know, that's one of the things you have to ask yourself. Do you want to live in a relationship where you always will be second? No matter what, you know, it doesn't matter. You will be second. And you know, I've seen that manifest in a lot of ways. I know musicians whose wives left because they said, "I'll always be second to the guitar," or second to the career. We both seen that as well, right? But that's what you have to ask yourself, right? And if you also ask yourself, what are your values in relationships? How do you want someone that you are together with will treat you? You know, and often they say that they want to be treated with love and respect, for instance. And it's obvious that it's not what happened, right? Because if this person do this, it's no way that they will treat you with love and respect. There's no way around it, you know.
So
there's just not. So
what can somebody? I mean, we talked about people going to group therapy and everything to get help, because it's basically it's very difficult to make that change on your own. When people do make the change, what do they need to change to? Like, if you're dealing with an addict, do you need to be someone who has stronger boundaries, or has just, you know, makes different kind of decisions? What do people need to get to be not codependent anymore?
Well, basically the fact is that you have to start with, as I said also, you know, if you have this, you have low self-worth, right? And it goes back to when you grow up, right? And you have the attachment theory. When we talk about this, right? We go back to the childhood, and we can see that they don't have a safe attachment, right?
To their parents.
To the
the family unit.
Secure attachment to the parents, right? And it tends to, what they keep doing is that if you have an unsecure attachment to your parents, what you did was that you had a parents that maybe gave you love a little bit then, but not then, right? Maybe a parent that was addicted himself, which means that when he was drunk, he didn't give you anything. But when he was sober, he gave you a lot of love. So it makes insecurity, which sort of build this need for controlling to get love, right? And this is what you continue to do then in the grown-up relationship, right?
Yeah.
So you have to sort of break that, and what I can say is that you have to work with this this self-worth, right? To understand that you are good enough as you are, that you are lovable as you are, stuff like that. But also trying to be where you're at, you know, not focusing on how you're holding your legs, or why you're doing this, or are you going to walk away, or that guy over there, right? That's often how it is when you are having this behavior. You're having a lot of needs for control.
Yeah.
And also, a lot of people with codependency, they want to be good. So they can be very good at their work, right? They can work really, really a lot.
Yeah.
You know, so
if someone was codependent, and then they came to you and said, "I'm no longer codependent," what qualities would they show? They would show that they had really good self-worth.
Yeah,
they
of
realized
course.
They were worthy of love and being loved.
Yeah, and
what else? Maybe.
I will always say as well that it's hard to say that I'm not codependent anymore, because the risk will always be that if you're in an environment that will open up for you to be codependent, you have a risk to go back there, right? Yeah. But of course, it's like you said, it's the self-value and being where you want to be, and living close to your values, and you know, continue to make decisions connected to your values, and be able to say no. It's a very good thing, because often these people have very hard time saying no. You know, so they often say yes to everything, except what they really want to do themselves.
Yeah. And also another signal, of course, is the addiction of their partner is not the controlling factor of their lives anymore.
No, it's not. So they have to find a way, you know, to live without that. Yeah. And without replacing it with something else as well, you know.
We talked about addiction and replacing addictions with other addictions.
Because that is, of course, what you can do. You can replace it with going into work or doing something else that will sort of need your energy and your control behavior. So, I mean, it's basically, I can say that working on your self-knowledge will help you out, and constantly doing that. Yeah.
And of course, when you go to group sessions like Al-Anon, you know, one of the powerful things about groups is that you realize you're not the only one. Yeah. That there are common patterns that play out.
That's true.
The stories change, but the patterns are the same.
Yes.
Yeah. And the powerful support of a community group that understands. And you also, one of the things that I see is very powerful about group work is that you also get to see where you are. It's like benchmarking in a way, because you might be in a relationship for 5 years and think this is like terrible that I've wasted so much time, but there might be someone else in the group that's been codependent for 55 years, you know what I mean? Yeah. And someone who's been doing it for 12 months, and you can see where you sort of fit on the scale of things. And that can be very powerful and healing for people to have that sense of knowing where they are. It helps secure them in understanding their own recovery process. Yeah, because they can see, well, this is where I'm at. And the other thing is when they see the people who've been doing it for 35 years, longer than them, they get to see the price of not changing. Yeah. The cost of not changing is written all over that person. Yeah. So that's very powerful, you know, as a sort of therapeutic motivator. Yeah, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also I think about what we talked about before with the family. You know, I mean, there's a need to come in peace with all of this. You know?
Come in peace.
And I know we're gonna talk about this a little bit more, but in other
context. Yeah.
Is there something that you want to put up with it?
No, I think it's just really interesting for us to explore different areas of relationships and different types of relationships and different dynamics, because as we do this series of talks on relationships, the reason I wanted you to talk about this particular issue was, one, it's not an area of expertise for me at all, because I don't work in that field, but also I think it's really valuable for people to have some kind of language around their behaviours. Yeah. So it's a lot of people watching this aren't codependent, wouldn't get diagnosed as codependent.
No.
But they might see in their relationship one little part of it that is. So it could be something that's not, or just say like relationship threatening, but it's relationship damaging. So by that I mean like maybe one person is like incredibly career focused. Yeah, and the other person's always making concessions for that, and they've accepted that as part of the culture of their relationship. But maybe if they can understand some of this talk, they could sit back and see, just become aware that I'm the one who's always sacrificing, and it's starting to affect me.
That's true.
Yeah, and it might just be like a tiny little change that person makes and says, I don't want you to work on Saturdays anymore so that we can be together. Like just a little thing that they do. And they break that little tiny piece of codependency that is existing in one little part of the relationship. And so I think it's really good for people to have this language and have this framework, so that as we do other discussions later on in the series about relationships, that they have it.
Yes, because I think we'll come back to that, because as I said, this with attachment theory, there are some good examples that shows on if you are unable to make secure attachment, there is a risk that when you get into a relationship, you won't make this attachment, the romantic attachment, and the relationship will die, right? Yeah. So we will come back to that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So,
but we're going to talk about parenting, we're going to talk about love relationships, we're going to talk about siblings and parents and all kinds of things. So it's going to be a fun set of sessions we're going to have coming up ahead.
It will.
Yep.
Yeah.
Krister, thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm, Larri.
And we do it again.
Yeah, thank you.